While the whole world watched the Vatican with breathless anticipation, Kylian Mbappé quietly stepped into a private jet. No press statement, no team entourage, no Instagram story. Just silence, deliberate and thick with purpose. Back in Paris, the city buzzed with speculation. The newly elected Pope, an American, Robert Francis Prevost, had just been announced to roaring cheers in St. Peter's Square. Bells rang out, and TV channels around the globe flashed the same images of smiling clergy and waving flags. But while headlines were breaking, one detail slipped under the radar. Mbappé hadn't shown up at PSG training that morning. No locker room banter, no social media updates. Even his inner circle kept unusually quiet. It was Ramadan, and his reflections usually filled the timeline. But today, nothing. Hours later, a blurry photo began circulating online. A fan at Rome's Fiumicino airport had snapped what looked like Mbappé walking off a private jet. The image was grainy, zoomed in but unmistakable. The side profile, the jawline, the cap pulled low. It was him. Social media erupted. Why is Mbappé in Rome? Is he there for the new pope? Humanitarian visit? Secret ceremony? Official? Representatives gave no answers. Later that day, a small Vatican official let slip a vague statement. A high-profile guest was expected for a private audience. Not public, not televised, just personal. That was all it took for the internet storm to break loose. But away from the theories and tweets, Mbappé walked through a side entrance into the Apostolic Palace, flanked by 2 Swiss guards. There were no cameras, no applause, just marble floors and ancient silence. Inside, he passed frescoes older than empires and paused at every hallway as if walking through a living museum of faith and memory. He was met by a soft-spoken cardinal, old, gentle, who smiled and said nothing at first, just a nod. Then he led him into a quiet room, with only a table, a chair, and a linen cloth. Atop the cloth sat a small golden box, gleaming under the soft overhead light. No speeches, no ceremony. The cardinal simply said, "His Holiness wanted to offer." A personal gesture, not religious, not political, just human. Mbappé stood still. He didn't reach for it right away. He studied it. It wasn't ornate, no carvings, no symbols. Just a ribbon tied carefully. When he finally lifted it, it was lighter than expected. "You may open it," the cardinal said, "or not. The choice is yours." Mbappé nodded quietly, the box cradled in his hands. He didn't open it, not yet. Instead, he offered a respectful bow to the cardinal, whispered a thank you in French, and stepped back. The gesture was simple, the moment sacred. Outside the room, the world hadn't stopped. In St. Peter's Square, the celebrations continued. Pilgrims snapped selfies. Reporters rushed to file stories. Children waved tiny Vatican flags. But none of that reached the private corridor where Mbappé now walked alone. He was escorted through a quiet garden exit, away from the crowds and press. No photographers were waiting, no curious fans, just the calm hum of the Vatican's back pathways. But the world is never quiet for long. Hours later, rumors sparked online. A concierge in a boutique Roman hotel mentioned a famous athlete who declined room service. An anonymous driver posted that he'd picked up a French-speaking guest from a Vatican gate. And then a cryptic message appeared from one of Mbappé's childhood coaches in Bondy. "Not every gift comes with applause." By evening, speculation had turned into frenzy. Was Mbappé blessed by the Pope? Did he receive a sacred relic? Is he converting? Is it political? Mbappé said nothing. But at precisely 11:59 p.m., his Instagram went black. A single post appeared. Some moments are not meant to be shared. No hashtags, no comments. The internet froze. To some it was poetic, to others infuriatingly vague. Fans praised his humility. Critics accused him of playing games. But the true believers, The ones who understood Mbappé beyond the pitch didn't need more. He wasn't chasing headlines. He wasn't making a statement. He was just being quietly, respectfully himself. In his hotel room, the box sat untouched. On the table, wrapped, still sealed in its ribbon, Mbappé sat by the window, lights of Rome glowing below, the hum of the city a soft murmur against the glass. He didn't tell anyone what had happened, not his agent, not his mother, not his teammates. Some things were too sacred for even that. The box remained on the table, golden and gleaming beneath the soft hotel lamp. Mbappé sat still, elbows on, his knees staring at it. He had held trophies heavier than this, lifted medals more elaborate, but nothing had ever felt quite like this. There was no inscription, no label, just the ribbon, tied with care, as if by hands that knew this moment. Wasn't meant to impress, but to touch. He reached out, untied the ribbon slowly, then folded it neatly and set it aside. Still, he didn't open the box. Instead, he picked up his laptop and browsed the news. Headlines lit up the screen like wildfire. What did the Pope give to Kylian Mbappé? Mbappé's Vatican visit, gift or gambit? Is silence the new statement? Some speculated wildly. A political alliance? A relic from the archives? An invitation to interfaith dialogue? A rare item of religious significance? He closed the laptop with a quiet sigh. Whatever was inside that box wasn't for them. It didn't belong to speculation or spin. He stood and looked out the window again. The city lights shimmered in the distance, soft and blurred by the glass. Rome pulsed beneath him, but up here it felt like the air itself had chosen reverence. His phone buzzed. A message from his mother was just a single red heart emoji. She must have seen the chaos online. As always, no questions, just love. He smiled, faintly, and replied with a thumbs up. Later that day, wrapped in a hoodie and sunglasses, Mbappé took a walk. He avoided the busy streets, found his way to a quiet square in Trastevere. He bought a slice of focaccia, warm and soft, and sat on a worn stone bench beneath a vine-wrapped wall. Nearby, an elderly man fed pigeons. Kids kicked a football with careless joy, shouting in Italian and laughing. And in that moment, watching. In them, he felt something simple and powerful. Peace, not the kind that came from silence after victory, but the kind that came from being small in a world that had seen everything. He closed his eyes, breathed in deeply. The box still waited back at the hotel. But the meaning, it was already beginning to unfold. That night, back in the hotel room, the golden box sat exactly where he'd left it. But something had shifted. The ribbon was now folded beside it, the cloth gently draped over the edge of the table. It no longer looked like a mystery. It looked like a memory in the making. Mbappé stood by the window again, watching the city of Rome twinkle. The bell towers rang the hour, echoing softly across the skyline. The world outside hadn't stopped, but in this room everything moved slower on purpose. He reached out and picked up the box once more, turned it over in his hands. It felt lighter than he remembered, almost fragile. He considered opening it. Again, fingers hovering at the edge of the lid, but something inside whispered, "Not yet." Instead, he set it down and opened his notebook. Not the public one, not the press notes one, the personal one, the one with dog-eared pages and scribbles. Written during long flights or quiet mornings before matches, he began to write, "Today, I held something I didn't expect. Not heavy, but it carried weight, not flashy. But it made me pause. I don't know if I'm ready to open it, but I know it already means something." The knock at the door came gently, room service again, but he hadn't ordered anything. A young hotel employee entered, nervous and excited. "I'm sorry, sir," he said softly. "I saw you on the news." Mbappé gave a calm smile. "It's all right." The boy placed a tray with mint tea on the table, then hesitated. "My father..." He used to talk about you a lot. Before he passed, his accent was Italian, but with something else Egyptian, maybe. His eyes were earnest. He said you played for more than just football. Mbappe's throat tightened slightly. He nodded, unsure of what to say. The boy looked at the box, then back at him. He would have been proud just to know you were there. Mbappé didn't correct him, didn't explain the truth or downplay the moment. He just whispered, "Thank you." After the boy left, Mbappé sat down at the table. The tea was still steaming. The box is still unopened. But something had shifted again. It wasn't about what was inside, it was about being trusted with it. As the night deepened, the rain returned soft and steady, a quiet rhythm against the window. Mbappé sat cross-legged, on the hotel bed, the box now closer, not just in distance but in emotion. He hadn't touched it since the boy left, but it no longer felt foreign. It felt like a part of the room now, like the hum of the air conditioning or the soft ticking of the clock. He opened his phone again, not for updates, not for headlines, but to reread his own post. Some moments are not meant to be shared. He stared at the words. They were still true. Not everything sacred needs an audience. The media, though, had other ideas. Podcasts were debating theories. Religious commentators wrote essays. A sports panel speculated live on air. Is Mbappé being used as a spiritual ambassador? Was the gesture political? Is he distancing himself from football to make a point? He turned the phone off. He hadn't written that sentence for them. It was a shield, a boundary, a reverent line between him and the noise. Later that morning, he went down for breakfast. The hotel staff greeted him with a quiet nod. No photos, no fuss. One waitress slipped him a folded note beside his coffee. "Thank you for representing us with grace." He read it, folded it again, and tucked it gently into his pocket. The box remained on the table upstairs bare now, without its ribbon or cloth. Just gleaming quietly under the morning sun, he touched the lid once more, feeling the faint warmth left by light. Still, he didn't open it, not out of fear, but out of respect, because maybe the gift wasn't just inside, maybe the gesture itself was the gift. He sat beside it and thought of everything that had brought him here, not just football, not fame, but the quieter parts, the prayers before matches, the kids he'd met in war-torn towns, the strangers who called him hope without ever meeting him. None of them had cameras, none of them asked for proof, and perhaps this box belonged among those stories unseen, unshared, but unforgettable. The knock on the door this time wasn't room service. It wasn't expected at all. When Mbappé opened it, he was greeted by a familiar face, older now, with lines around his eyes, but a calmness that came from experience. A retired footballer, a former teammate briefly, during a charity match years ago, now known more for his philanthropic work than his time on the pitch. "I heard you were in Rome," the man said quietly. Mbappé nodded, welcoming him in with a simple gesture. No questions asked, they sat opposite each other with tea between them. No media, no microphones. Just two men, both shaped by fame, but moved by something deeper. "I don't want to know what's in the box," the visitor said after a moment. "That's not why I came." Mbappé looked at him, eyes soft. "I just wanted to say, don't let them take the meaning away." Mbappé raised an eyebrow. "The world," the man continued, "the headlines, the noise, whatever's in that box was meant for you, not for them. Don't let their questions unravel the gift." They sat in silence for a while. Not awkward, not tense, just still. Before leaving, the man placed something on the table, a worn set of prayer beads, smooth and faded from years of handling. "They've been with me a long time," he said, "but I think they're meant to be passed on." Mbappé didn't know what to say, so he simply nodded and closed his hand gently around the beads. After the door closed, he sat again at the table. The weight in the room had shifted again. The beads, the box, the quiet visit. It wasn't about answers anymore. It was about what you carry with you when no one's looking. He looked at the golden lid one last time that evening, and finally alone, he opened it. No flash, no music, no revelation, just a man, a moment, and a gift only he would ever fully understand. When Mbappé lifted the lid, the room didn't change. There were no angels singing, no divine beams of light, just silence, and that was enough. His eyes scanned the contents, and whatever was inside, it didn't shock him, it didn't confuse him, it just settled something inside him. He didn't smile, he didn't cry, but his posture shifted, his shoulders relaxed, his breathing steadied, like he'd received a reply to a question he didn't know he'd been asking. He gently closed the box. There was no urge to tell anyone. No need to show it, prove it, or share it. The meaning wasn't in the object. It was in the trust, the belief that he could carry it without explanation. Later that evening, Mbappé went for a walk. The storm clouds had rolled in, and a soft drizzle dusted the streets. Still, he walked unbothered. No hood, no effort to hide. Something had changed, not in how he moved, but in how the world moved around him. People didn't stop him. They simply watched with a kind of reverence, like they sensed something had happened. Not something famous, something sacred. In the side streets of the old Jewish quarter, a boy spotted him. He didn't shout or run over. He just walked up slowly. "You're Kylian Mbappé?" he asked, his voice low. Mbappé nodded. "Yes." The boy glanced around. "Did you really meet the Pope?" There was a pause. Mbappé looked at him, then said something honest and simple. "I met a man, and he gave me something kind." The boy smiled and nodded like that was all he needed to hear. And maybe it was, because sometimes the truth doesn't need to be explained. It just needs to be carried with care. That night, as rain streaked the hotel windows and thunder whispered through the sky, Mbappé sat in the stillness of his room. The golden box now sat beside a small, open Quran. Next to it, the prayer beads glinted faintly under the bedside lamp. He picked up his phone. No words this time. No sentences. Just a single photo. His hand holding the prayer beads. The Quran open beside it. No caption. No hashtags. Comments turned off. He posted it and let the silence speak. Within minutes the image was everywhere. Some praised it as a message of peace. Others saw it as a quiet declaration of faith. But to him, it was none of those things. It wasn't meant to explain, it was meant to anchor, to remind, to reclaim the moment from the noise. Some called it graceful. Some accused him of playing both sides. But in Egypt, a school teacher printed it and used it to teach about respect across faiths. In Brazil, a pastor quoted the gesture during a sermon on humility, and in a small Indonesian village, a young boy hung the photo on his wall, not because he understood the headlines, but because he saw peace in it, and somehow that was enough. A quiet gesture offered in truth became a ripple that no broadcast could predict. It wasn't the box, it wasn't the Pope, it was the stillness that came after. And Mbappé finally understood. Some gifts were never meant to be explained, only carried. In the days that followed, the internet, as it always did, tried to twist something sacred into spectacle. News anchors dissected the silence. Influencers used the photo as a backdrop for philosophical takes. Tabloids threw wild theories. Papal artifact passed to Mbappé, hidden religious message, the gift that sparked a global guessing game. But something was changing. The fury didn't burn hotter, it burned out. The Vatican remained silent. No official statements, no clarifications, just a gentle refusal to feed the flames. And slowly, people began to ask different questions, not about what was in the box, but about what really mattered. A former Vatican archivist, no longer in the public eye, published a quiet blog post. One line from it caught attention everywhere. Sometimes in history, we offer symbols to those whose faith we do not share, not to convert them, but to honor the light they carry in their own tradition. That sentence traveled farther than any scandal. It was translated into Arabic, Turkish, Malay, and Swahili. It appeared in church newsletters, school chalkboards, and Friday khutbahs. It became more than a sentence. It became a bridge. And suddenly, the box didn't matter. What mattered was dignity, that someone could receive something in trust and carry it in silence, not to hide, but to protect its meaning. Back in Paris, Mbappé returned to training. No press conference, no follow-up interviews, just football. But something in his manner had changed. Teammates noticed. He laughed the same, ran the same, scored the same. But he listened more, paused more, gave more attention to moments others ignored, not because he was trying to be different, because something inside him already was. One afternoon, Mbappé made an unannounced visit to a youth center just outside Paris. No cameras, no PR team. Just kids. He played a short game of street football with them, sneakers slipping on the pavement, his laughter louder than any of theirs. For a moment, he was just Kylian, the boy from Bondy. Afterward, the kids sat in a circle with him, peppering him with playful questions. What's your favorite snack? Who's faster, you or Haaland? Do you dream in goals? Then a girl raised her hand. She was shy, maybe 11 or 12. Did you really meet the Pope? The room fell quiet. Mbappé looked at her, thoughtful. Then he smiled, not wide, but warm. I met someone kind, he said. That's all I'll say. And somehow that was enough. No need for grandeur. No need for answers. The truth wasn't always in the telling. Sometimes it lived in the choosing not to tell. That same night, a clip of the moment, taken quietly by a staff member, made its way online. But instead of sparking drama, it calmed the storm even more. People began to understand he wasn't avoiding the truth, he was protecting its peace, and peace, in a world full of shouting, was the loudest message of all. Night returned to Rome. The city moved slower now. Journalists had packed their bags. The flags were taken down, and the square was quieter, lit by golden street lamps instead of flashbulbs. In his hotel room, Mbappé sat once more with the box. It was closed again, not locked, just resting. Not forgotten, just part of the space. He had carried it through gardens, down hidden Vatican halls, and through cobbled streets without saying a word. Now, on his last night in Rome, he sat with it one final time. He reached for the hotel's notepad and wrote a small message. Simple, honest, folded it and tucked it under the ribbon. Then he packed the box into his travel bag, not in a case, not wrapped for protection. Just placed there gently, like something you don't show off, but take with you because it's now a part of who you are. As he headed downstairs, he stopped at the front desk. "The boy who brought my tea," he said softly to the concierge. "Please give him this." He handed over a card. "Of course, Mr. Mbappé," the concierge said, surprised but respectful. The note read, "Never stop doing small things with a big heart. You never know who's watching." And then he stepped into the night. The car was waiting, engine humming low, headlights soft against the wet pavement. As it pulled away from the hotel, Rome disappeared behind him, not like a city left behind, but like a memory sealed. He didn't look back. Some places don't need a second glance. They live with you quietly, forever. The return to Paris was unceremonious, just how Mbappé preferred it. No crowd at the airport, no statement from the club. Just a familiar car, familiar streets, and the familiar silence that followed something profound. He unpacked slowly that evening. The golden box now rested on a simple shelf, not displayed, not hidden, just there. Somewhere between his signed jerseys and his childhood football, it found its place. Not because it matched them, but because it didn't. It meant something else entirely. He didn't tell his friends about the contents, not his teammates, not even his family, because some things aren't meant to be understood by many. They're meant to be held by one. At training the next day, no one asked him about Rome, and that was the surprising part. They'd seen the photos, the speculation. But somehow they knew not to ask. Mbappé moved through drills the same way, sharp, focused, but with something gentler behind his eyes. During cool-downs, he took more time to talk to the younger players. During water breaks, he asked about their families. Small things, subtle shifts, like someone who had been reminded what really mattered. And that night, while the rest of the world tuned in to debate the Champions League, he sat quietly at his desk, flipping through his old notebook. He turned to a blank page and wrote, "Not everything has to be known to be real. Not every moment needs an audience to matter." He paused, then added, "Sometimes the greatest gift is being trusted with what you never asked for." And he closed the notebook. The noise around the box slowly faded into the background, but not everywhere. On television panels, pundits still speculated. In online threads, fans still theorized. The phrase, "What did the Pope give Mbappé?" lingered like a riddle without an answer. Some framed it as a spiritual controversy. Others treated it like an international mystery. But for Mbappé, it was neither. It was something else entirely. In Cairo, a respected imam posted a short video. The prophet accepted gifts, not to boast, not to display, but because a gift given sincerely should be received with grace. It does not compromise faith, it confirms it. That clip went viral in silence, not with shouting, but with nods of quiet understanding. Mbappé never reposted it. He didn't need to. It wasn't about defending himself. It was about standing quietly in what he already knew. Later that week, after a light training session, Mbappé slipped into a small mosque near Montreuil. No entourage, no fanfare. He prayed in the back corner. No one approached him, not out of fear, but out of respect. After the prayer, an older man who hadn't recognized him at first leaned over and whispered, "You don't need to prove anything. We know who you are." Mbappé looked at him, eyes soft. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. That night, as he walked home under the streetlights, hands in his coat pockets, he felt lighter, not because the world had understood him, but because he had stopped needing it to. Faith doesn't require permission, and grace doesn't need applause. The headlines kept coming, but they no longer carried weight. Mbappé returned to his rhythm, training, playing, giving, living. The noise had passed like a storm that finally understood it could not shake the roots of something grounded. The golden box remained on the shelf, unmoved, undisturbed, but not forgotten, because it wasn't the kind of thing you display. It was the kind you carry, quietly, like a prayer in motion. The public had moved on, new controversies, new transfers, new players arising. But in homes across the world, that moment, the silent one, the one with no photo, no footage, had left its trace. In Indonesia, a boy wore a PSG shirt to school every day, saying, "Mbappé believes in good." In Senegal, an old man told his grandson, "You see, true power is when you don't need to explain your kindness." And in Rome, in a quiet corridor of the Apostolic Palace, a Vatican staffer dusted a wooden bench near a small room, the one where no cameras were allowed, and paused for a moment, remembering the young man who entered without noise and left without a single request. Back in Paris, Mbappé watched the city lights flicker from his window. He didn't think about the box much anymore. But he remembered what it had given him. Not a message, not a secret, but a space between chapters, a space to pause, to reflect, to realign. He opened his journal one last time and wrote, "Some gifts are not given to change your path, but to remind you why you chose it." He closed the book, closed the evening, and as he turned out the lights, a quiet peace settled across the room, the kind that doesn't shout, the kind that lives. If this story moved you, we hope it reminded you of one simple truth: some of the most powerful moments in life are not the ones we share, but the ones we choose to carry, quietly, faithfully. Subscribe for more stories that honor the stillness. God bless.